I stumbled upon this one day in a dream. In my dream, I came upon this huge big pillar, a pile driven into the ocean. And the bridge that it formerly supported was gone now. Only the piles remained. And I knew I was dreaming. And I figured to myself, if I held that pile and I could touch it, and if it seemed to me solidly real, what I'm going to do, I'm going to hold on to that pile. In the dream, I know it's a dream, but I'm going to hold that pile as solidly as I can and compel myself to awake holding the pile. Well, I did. I held the pile with all of my might. And I said, now, Neville, you know you're sleeping. You know that you're dreaming now. Awake. And I awoke in the water. I'm actually holding that pile, and I'm standing up in what formerly I knew to be a dream. It ceased to be a dream. It's real. I'm in a world just as real as this. And here I am holding this enormous pile, and it's in the East Indies, not the West Indies where I was born. It was in the East Indies, a very primitive area. And then some animal came down to the beach, a strange-looking creature. And at that moment, I was panicky. And that moment of shaking emotion, and I woke on my bed in New York City. But I discovered that secret of feeling. So he said, come close, come near, that I may feel you, my son. He heard the voice. He said, your voice is the voice of Jacob. Come near, let me see really if you are Esau. And he did it by feeling. And so, lying on my bed one night, right here in Beverly Hills, many years ago, it must have been 14 or 15 years ago, I suddenly became aware that I am seeing what I shouldn't see. I am looking into the most marvelous interior of a plush hotel. It seemed that way to me. And so consciousness followed vision, and I found myself in the room. But I knew I was on the bed, so I came back to the bed. I'm still seeing the interior of this room, and I went back into that room. I came back again. I must have done it 12 or 20 times. It was fun, going into the room, and the room was just like this, real. Then I came back to the bed. Now, I said, I am now going to explore. Regardless of consequences, I am going to explore. And so I went into the room. It seemed like a room 30 by 20 from the bed. When I entered it with the decision to explore, the room closed upon me and became a third of itself. Say it became 10 by 7. And I found it was a dressing room for a huge big suite. Beautifully done, but it wasn't yet occupied. It was there to be occupied, but the room at the moment, that is the suite, was not occupied. And I thought, well, now I'll go through the door. I didn't go through like some gossamer. I opened the door with my hand, and I walked right through that door. I was solidly real to myself. Then I walked down the corridor. And the corridor that I walked down was intersected by the main corridor. And all the lights were on. And two ladies were coming down that corridor, the main one. But I knew this thing began as a dream. So I knew, well, all ends run true to origins. Therefore, if the origin is the dream, this is the dream. So I say to the ladies, ladies, this is the dream. This whole vast world is a dream. And then they were afraid of me. Who wouldn't be afraid of a man in a such appears on a place in your, I would say, walking, and tells you this whole vast world is a dream. You would think he's nuts, he's insane. And so they thought I was insane, and they got just as far as they could from me, and walked right next to the wall, duck style, one behind the other, and looking at me very suspiciously. Then I saw this object hanging from space, and it reminded me of a similar object I had seen in a friend's home in North Hollywood. So I say to them, look, see this? And I held it, and to my surprise, it isn't gossamer. This is not an after image. This is not a memory image. This is real. The thing is solid. Well, I held it, and by this time they were way down. They took one great look as they looked back at me, and then darted into the main room. And here I am standing alone, holding on to this thing. I said to myself, Neville, you know this is a dream. The origin is a dream, the end is a dream. Come on, wake up. I closed my eyes to the obvious, and I held this thing here, and I couldn't. I opened my eyes again. I'm still standing there. But how am I going to get back to my room in Beverly Hills? I didn't know there was no place I could go to take me back there, but I remembered feeling is the secret. I'm holding this here now, and it's real. It's solid. I'm solid. They saw me. They heard my voice. And I walked on, and every step was solidly real as walking on here now. So I imagined that my head was on a pillow. And when I could feel a pillow under my head while I'm standing, I suddenly felt myself in a horizontal position. And my head is on a pillow. And then, all of a sudden, I could feel that pillow. But I was cataleptic. I couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't move a hand. Couldn't move a finger. And here I am, a living being in a dead body. So I said to myself, well, they'll find the body tomorrow morning, and they've got to cut it up because I'm insured for a little bit. And to prove that nobody took my life, they have to cut it up to find out why he died. Always have to ask that question. And they'll give it the name. If they can't find it, they're going to give it a name anyway. So here I am, couldn't open my eyes, couldn't move my hand. In about 15, 20 seconds, it would seem much longer than that, my little finger, I could move it. And then I could move my hand a bit. Still couldn't open my eyes. And we were sleeping in a double bed. So I pushed my hand out, my left hand, and I could feel the warmth of my wife's body. At that, I knew I was back on my bed. In another 15 or 20 seconds, I could, with great effort, open the lids of my eyes, and here came all the familiar objects on the walls, on the bureau, and everything returned to consciousness. Now, I stepped into a world just as real as this. I am telling you, there are worlds within worlds within worlds, and they're all here right now. Just like turning on a radio, and you turn it ever so slightly, and you have a new wavelength and a new station coming in, bringing something entirely different, and they're not interfering with each other. And these worlds are all here now, and they're people, just as we are peopling this world, and they're just as real as this world. It's terrestrial. And you don't walk for it. I was on the bed. I seemed to walk into it. I would say, 10 feet away? But the same area permeated the bed, and the bed did not obstruct it. And that world into which I stepped did not obstruct the house that I lived in Beverly Hills. It's all here, the whole vast world. Worlds within worlds within worlds. So I tell you, facts are the flood. That's the deluge. There was no other kind of flood. We are actually inundated with the facts of life. And these facts, we change them every day. Today, this is the cause of so-and-so. Tomorrow, that's not so. It's another cause you found. And then the next day, another cause. But while we haven't found the next cause, we believe that to be the fact. And we worship the facts. So I tell you, all things are in the human imagination. Man is all imagination, and God is man, and exists in us, and we in him. The eternal body of man is the imagination, and that is God himself. There is no other God. It's all your own wonderful human imagination. And the one thing the whole vast world aches for is the awakening of the imagination. And when it comes with the birth of the promised child, which sets a man free from the horrors of this world we call the world of nature. For nature is simply that principle on which depends the sameness of forms in transmitted life. And so the thing goes over and over. Haven't you observed a year that at a certain time of the year, money is tight? All of a sudden it flows, and then at a certain time of the year, it's tight. Why? It's a habit. It's a transmitted state. You fix that fact in your mind's eye, and if you got $50,000 today, and say it's the month of December when it's always tight, you're going to loan the money out or give it away before December comes by. So when it comes by, you're going to be tight again. It's a peculiar, I would say, slavery, this thing called nature. in the sameness of forms in transmitted light. Now you can penetrate the fact and break it. And that's what we're here to teach. I come not to abolish the law and the prophets. I come not to abolish them, but to fulfill them and tell you the real law. It's not washing your hands before meals, although that's a very nice, clean thing to do. It's not giving certain diets, doing this, that, and the other. He explains that the entire law is psychological. He takes one of the commandments, which is a graphic one, to show you how everything must be interpreted psychologically. He said, you have heard it said of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say unto you, any man who looks lustfully upon a woman has already committed the act in his heart with her. But what man hasn't? What man has not violated that? So he tells you the whole thing is a psychological thing. You can't restrain the impulse because you may restrain it based upon 1,000 different reasons. Maybe you are afraid of the consequences. Maybe you are afraid that someone will find out. Maybe you're afraid of this, that, and the other. But the impulse was there, and he tells you the impulse was the act. Well, if the impulse was the act, then creative acts are imaginal. For it was an imaginal act. So I have to observe my imaginal acts. For the imaginal act is a fact. It's going to actually become a fact, and then confront me.